Welcome to the Savage Productions YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Savage Productions YouTube channel, and today is a very, very special day because we're finally going to be modifying this beast. But in all seriousness, this is my daily driver, just a super stock Focus ST, and today we're actually going to be installing the Snow Performance Stage 2.5 Methanol Injection Kit. So in a previous video, we actually installed it on my dad's car, which this is a ProCharged 2012 Mustang GT. But I just picked up the kit from Snow Performance. It's the same exact kit that's on this car that's now going to be going on this car. So it's almost laughable, honestly, because this thing's super stock. I basically, just wanted to get a little bit more out of it, I guess. I don't want to spend the thousands of dollars to put, exhaust and all these different bolt-ons on it that only make, I don't know, maybe another 20 horsepower or something like that until you start spending real big bucks. But, I have my race car. If you all seen my Mustang, that thing's currently in the build. It's 363 cubic inch, going to be a nitrous express powered car, and we actually have that here in the shop right now. But if you're not familiar, this is Savage Performance. This is my dad's shop. We just opened it about 3 months ago. See, Savage Performance right here. We just did some coilovers here, doing a bunch of work on this car, and my car is back there. We're going to be working on that after we get the Snow Performance kit installed on my Focus here. Here's my Fox body. It has a 10-cylinder race car 850 cert cage in it that we actually just painted. So check that video out if you haven't seen it. It'll be linked right there. I actually didn't mention, but this thing is a 2JZ swapped Lexus GS 300, and it actually sounds pretty good. It's pretty baller. Let him hear it, Dad. And then while he's putting that car away, as far as this car goes, we did wheels and tires, some suspension components on it, and we're actually going to be taking the engine out, cleaning it, doing a cam swap, all that kind of stuff. If you're interested in watching any of that, please subscribe to my channel. Just look at the rest of the videos that I have on there, and I'm sure you'll see some of this stuff popping up every now and then. All right, so we got the car pulled in. I'm going to go ahead and put the times kind of just up here on the screen of what we're going to do. So first, we're going to unbox this thing. And then second, we're actually going to go out here. I'm going to show you where the parts are on the other application on the Mustang. And then we're going to get to the install on this car. All right, so we'll do a little unboxing here. So this is what you'll get when you get it from Snow Performance directly. This is the box it comes in. So you open it up. Over here, you'll see the actual water meth feed line. This is the pump, which you have to mount gravity fed underneath this tank, which is actually a really nice looking tank. You can actually drill and tap this to put a float in there, and then this is where the actual line comes out from the bottom to feed into the pump. And besides that, we have the gauge, and then this is like your toolkit. So in here you have the float, you have just different kind of tees and fittings, some sealant, stuff like that. And the nozzle is also in here, which I opted for the white nozzle. There's actually a chart on their website. Just look on that chart to see which nozzle will match your application on your vehicle with your amount of boost. And of course we have some stickers and some general installation rules here. Just a little guide. From them I also ordered an additional sealant and a bung that actually goes into rubber. So this is how I'm going to attach the nozzle. They also had one that is a weld-on bung for aluminum. So if you have an aluminum pipe where you're going to be mounting it, get the aluminum one. If you have a rubber one, get this one. But basically, you take this, you tap your actual coupler or your hose or whatever you want to do, put that in there, and then that's where the nozzle goes. And it's a perfect mount for it. They make it. So definitely get one of those. And then they sent me some additional goodies in here too, like these little gel sticker things, which are really cool, like kind of squishy. And then I really wanted kind of a factory appearance on mine. I didn't want to cut up the interior at all, so this isn't actually a Snow Performance product, but this was made by Ortiz Custom Pods. These things are really cool, man. This guy does some really good work. It's all custom for a bunch of different applications. You can kind of see on that right there. And in here is actually the gauge pod. So this one replaces the factory driver's side vent. So if you look right here, that's where it goes. All right, so on Dad's car, starting with the tank, we actually used the factory windshield washer reservoir. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see. You might be able to see in there. It's a little red, I think. But yeah, that's the water meth in there. So we didn't use the tank that came with the Snow Performance kit. We just drilled and tapped into this. Right here is the nozzle. So it's spraying right here, right next to the intake, which typically you kind of want it down like right after the intercooler. That way it has more distance to atomize. But there was already a tap right there, so we just wanted to utilize that. And then if you look right down in here, this is actually where we mounted the pump. So the feed for the pump is below the bottom of the reservoir for the windshield washer fluid. And then really that's about it for here. And then as I showed you before, the gauge is right here. This is a custom kind of, well, not really custom, but you can order these specifically for these cars, or like I said, just look online for any kind of regular 52 millimeter gauge pod for your car. So if you get your instructions, the first thing it says to do is to start sealing the low level sensor into the actual tank, which that is good for sure to do first, because you want to make sure that the actual seal is completely sealed, because you don't want to put the water meth in there if the stuff isn't set up yet. But we recommend that first what you want to do is figure out where you want to place this, because if you can't find a place to place this anywhere, then you might end up using the factory windshield washer reservoir, and then the work that you would do here is just wasted. And then with that, you also need to figure out where you're going to place this, because as I've said, this needs to be placed, or at least the inlets of this needs to be placed vertically underneath here. You need to know exactly where you're going to be placing these things before you really start on this. Also, besides not knowing where you're going to mount this or not figuring out a place, usually stock windshield washer reservoirs hold more fluid than one of these can. So if you don't want to be refilling it all that often, or you're going to be using it a lot, maybe consider using the stock windshield washer reservoir. I still want to retain my windshield washer fluid, so this is what I'm going to be doing. So we were looking in the engine bay, really no place that we could actually mount this bottle up there, or this canister here. So we went to the back of the car. There's a really good spot in the hatch that actually will look really good and it'll just fit in there really well. So then we went to the back of the car, jacked it up, and looked underneath it to see if there's any spot under here where we could mount the pump, because got to mount it underneath it. So there's the pump. This is the feed side, so it needs to feed in this way, and then this is out. So we found this place, which this is on the frame, part of the suspension, but this part is solid to the body, which you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, wherever you're mounting it, it doesn't move. That's just a kind of a general rule of thumb. But we found it'll mount right here, and then the top of it actually, you can't see it right now, but it will just pretty much go through the floorboard into the spare tire well. Yeah, so right up there at the top, you can see we'll just pop a hole in the floor right there, and that's where the spare tire well is.
Yeah, so that worked out good, because it's going to be the feed coming in, and
Yep.
then we'll come out and run it to the front.
Yep. And then our plan after that, probably go along that suspension bar that you see right there, pop over here, run along here. We popped this cover down because we were actually kind of thinking of mounting it up in there. Run it along there, and then run along these other wires, and we actually see one of these is actually open, so we'll probably just utilize that, run it all the way along here, get a little bit closer, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do with it up there. So now that we know where we're going to mount this thing, we're going to go ahead and start on the canister here and get the float put in there, so that sets up. All right, so as far as the tank is going to go right there. We're going to have to probably etch out a little rectangle just so we can fit this down all the way, and then this whole piece can slide in and out. And then I was looking here for the placement of the float. Once this is down all the way, we will have enough room to mount the float about a third of the way up. So that means these wires will be coming out right here, and then our actual game plan is to run the wires up through the grommet where we take the actual feed into the pump, run the wires up here, and then we'll run the wires with the float all the way in the car over to the gauge. So then that way we actually don't have to go through the firewall or anything. All right, so we went ahead and actually marked, this is where we're gonna try to drill the hole. This right here is basically where the top of the clearance is that I have. So it'll basically be about like that. So you see it just kind of lines up. Gonna go ahead and drill this, follow the instructions on how to secure it. Basically, you drill the hole run this in there, run the wires through, pull this through the hole, and then this gasket gets put in there and tightened up with this nut right here. You also have to make sure that when you put this in there, if it's going in there like this, the little arrow right there has to be pointed down, because the float works by being up and floating, and then whenever the level goes down, it closes, and then that sends a signal to say that it's low. Alright, so if you want to drill this hole right, basically what you want to do is mic from here to here with the gasket on, because this is what has to fit through that hole, and then compare that to a rat tail bit that you have, and make sure that you measure all the way across thick-wise like this. How big is this?
Well, if we go right here, 1890 was the biggest one we can go. That's 1888.
Okay.
And then if we go a little smaller, see 1890.
Yep.
And then that one was 17. That's too small.
Yep.
So 1890, and the next one's too big.
Gotcha. So which one is the one that we're going with?
1890. Because see, this actually is right at 1800.
Yeah. So then basically you want to take this. Can you find which one that is again? 1890. And it's that one. So we want to tape off the last two. All right. Go ahead and do that. So we're taping off the last two little bumps to make sure that we don't go all the way through. All right. So we'll drill our hole all the way up to the tape line and not through the tape line. We already got our pilot hole started, and then now we're just going to go to that second tape line. Alrighty.
You have to clean out the inside, huh?
Yeah. So unless your stepper bit is able to go all the way through, there's a little bit of trimming that you have to do to make sure that the entire thickness is the same size.
Yeah, it was just a little skin.
Yeah, not hard. Alright, so we got the float in there, got it fed through. We were able to just reach finger in there and grab the wires. So now we're going to tighten put the gasket in there, slide the nut on, and then start tightening it up. Just make sure that the gasket goes in, and it needs to like flare out like that, and then that's what secures this whole thing. And then, like I said, make sure that the arrow is pointing down. Okay, once we're done with that, then we will put this on, which is our feed nozzle, and then make sure that the silicone starts setting up on this, and then we'll be ready. So when you're tapping this, one thing that you want to make sure, when you haven't tightened it up yet, you want to push this all the way in as far as you can when the gasket's on there, because that way the gasket can go in, and then you put this nut on, and as you're pushing it in, you want to be tightening it as much as you possibly can. Well, not as much as you possibly can, because
It's
then it'll
going to
break.
take two people.
Yeah, it's pretty much going to take two people.
You got to have somebody pushing that, keeping the gasket against this.
Yeah.
As you tighten this nut, it will fold the inside up and around, and then we'll show them.
So a good way to check to see if you
there
did
you
it
go.
right is to see that the gasket is actually pushed through and then squeezed around the outside. Because we did it the first time and we realized that the gasket wasn't squeezed on the inside. If you had it pushed, if you had it pulled out and then you tightened with this whole thing on the outside, then you'd kind of see two layers of gaskets there, and that's not how it needs to be. So
Yeah, one layer on the inside, one layer on the outside.
yep. So then it's squeezed around there, and then again had to make sure that the float is the little arrow on the float is pointed down. We also put that blue Loctite, like I said, so then the nut won't back out. So we figured out the angle that we wanted this thing. We put the E6000 sealant on it that they provide. We kind of want it like that angle right about there. Can we do another full revolution? Looks like it.
Probably can even do one more, actually.
You think? If we tighten it? Now you got the sealant on your fingers.
Yeah. And
That stuff smells.
yeah, it's some really mean stuff, man.
Well, that shouldn't leak, but the instructions say to go ahead and put it in there and then just let it sit up and then put some water in it, make sure that there's no leaks, and then after that you can install the tank. We may go ahead and start drilling the holes because we were going to just be checking for clearance and stuff like that, but we'll get that covered. mount this up and then start on the rest of the kit. All right, so we were going to mount the pump, and we did a little pilot hole from the bottom, and we popped up right here, and the whole spare tire goes right here, and that's right in the middle. I thought the spare tire was a little bit smaller and that we might be able to get away with getting it on the backside. So we actually just went straight down here, and we got a little grommet in there. I actually modified one of the grommets that came with the mount for the pump, and it actually can fit the line and the cable through there. So got that drilled in there. I got the hole drilled in this thing, and that just is going to sit right there. And then tank. So I think all of this up here is pretty good. So we went ahead and ran the cable and the hose through the grommet. Let me see if I can find it. Yep, I think yeah, right there. So you don't want to have it kinked too much. It's not really curved all that much. Have it running over here, just make sure it's not going to like interfere with anything. And then left ourselves plenty of slack for when we mount this thing here. All right, so we actually had to run another wire here. I thought we were going to be using the smaller wire for the power, but it's actually a smaller wire than the power that's on the actual pump. So we got this one ran down here, and then this one is actually going to be the one that runs all the way to the gauge. So this one's going to be used for the ground for the float. So we're running that down here, connecting it to the same ground, just this bolt. Whenever we put this through, that the pump's going to be grounded to. So we're going to go ahead and mount that pump up right now. So the instructions don't mention this, but we're actually taking these out and blue Loctiting them, and then while we're at it, we're going to be using this right here for the ground for the pump, or not the pump, the float, and then we're going to be using this whole bolt and everything for the ground for the pump itself. So went ahead and grinded all that off, just to make sure there's smooth ground. We grounded off the one that it's going to be on the frame, make sure it's all just a good ground, because lots of stuff can happen if you have grounding issues. All right, so we got the pump mounted up in here. Stop making noise. We had to add some little spacers because these bolts, they don't have threads all the way up, but it worked out fine. These actually came in super handy. So these actually came off of my dad's Mustang, and they're basically made for spots like this where you can get a bolt on the back, but you can't necessarily get like a wrench on it or something like that. So as it tightened up, you know, this little arm pushes up against this and basically holds it in place. So that worked out really well. Got this tightened up. We have the positive wire coming over here, connected to the wire that's coming through that grommet up there. Ground cable for the float is running and connected to the back of the bracket, like what I showed you before. And then this ground cable for the actual pump is ran around and connected in here. So you might ask yourself, well, why didn't you just come this way and connect it right here? Well, we want to give ourselves plenty of slack in case we ever have to kind of come back and do some maintenance on it. Same thing with this wire and then the line too up there. So just kind of preventative maintenance, thinking ahead, all that kind of stuff. You want to do that with your install. Now we're going to go up in there and mount the bottle. Okay, so we got all the wires and everything ran up through here. Got the floor thing in, and I actually went ahead and cut this out. So fits down in there perfectly. A little bit of a rough cut, but it'll be fine. So that's all that I had to do, and that lines up perfectly with the holes that we already kind of marked. So we're probably going to go ahead and test this thing, put some water in it, make sure it holds water, and then after that we'll mount it, wire it up, and then this part will be done. All right, we got the reservoir installed, looking really good. Just got the wires kind of running back in there, got the cap on and everything. It's freaking really secure. It's got 5 cell tappers in there, and this is basically how it's going to look. So I'm super happy with the way that turned out. We still have 2 wires to run. One's going to be the positive for this, which is going straight to the gauge, and then the other one is actually the power for the pump, and that's also going to the gauge. So it's going to come through here, and then we're going to find a way to run it all the way to the front of the car, and we'll put the gauge in. But that's going to be it for today. We're going to come back, hit it again tomorrow. Go ahead and finish up everything else, get the wires ran, get the gauge in. After we get the gauge installed, all that we have left is to run the methanol hose up to the actual intercooler boot, and I'm going to put it right after the intercooler. pretty much reached like the halfway point, I'd say. Once we get the cables over there, everything else is just going to kind of go pretty flawlessly, really. Got the first 50% out of the way, which is the hardest part. But I can actually go ahead and put all of my spare tire and everything back in. So I'm going to do that, and I'll see you all tomorrow. All right, guys, so we're back on the second day of the install. We kind of started later in the day yesterday, just on the weekend. So, you know, it probably would only take us about a day to do it, but we're on the second day now. So we actually ran the line last night right before we left. So again, here we have the pump. The line's gonna be basically coming down and looped in right here. We're gonna trim off the excess. Runs up over there, just make sure it's not on any moving parts. Runs up in there, runs all along there, just kind of securing it neatly with zip ties. Neatly is the important part. This was the part that I was talking about earlier that was really cool that we found. So it's just running in here, running all around here. We wanted to keep it away from all the heat, so the exhaust and turbo, wanted to keep it away from that. So we have it running over this frame rail. It's coming out right here. We put some wire loom over it because it's going around some sharp corners and stuff. It's coming up there, going around the bracket for that, going around the bracket for that, running up through here and around here, and it's kind of going through that opening right there. So all that kind of keeps it secure. And then when it's actually in the car, the idea is to have it up in here. We actually have like a check valve that we need to put in somewhere, probably in line right around there. And it's gonna loop around, and then this is gonna run through here on top of this frame. And then actually right here is where the cold side comes in and goes right up in there to the throttle body. So we actually took that off because we wanted to drill a hole. And you want to take that out and show them oh, you already put it in. Basically got our bit here
for aluminum porting.
Yeah, got that one, a little aggressive bit, and I spent probably a couple minutes just opening up the hole and finally got it to where this fits through. It goes in through the bottom and just pops out through like that. So then put some of that adhesive silicone on there and tighten it up, and that should seal it up pretty well. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. We knew that we were gonna be attaching it to that tube, but we didn't want to take the tube off yet because we didn't know exactly where it was gonna go. So once we ran the line and we knew where we were gonna put it, then we took the tube off after marking it, started drilling the hole. And the reason why we took it off and not just drilled it in place here is because you have to blow it out to make sure that none of that stuff goes into the intake afterward. All right, we got the bung all the way on. I went ahead and modified it just a little bit, just grinded it down. That way, whenever this tightens up, because this is a 90, it actually has a little bit more threads to go down now. These are really, I believe, meant for the straight ones, but I ordered this after ordering this, so that's on my part. But we're gonna go ahead and put this in. I went ahead and did the E6000 on it. Whenever you do this, make sure that it's not covering up the nozzle, because then your kit will not work. So I'm gonna put this in there. It says do it hand tighten and then half a turn past finger tighten. All right, so I got this side ran all the way to where it's supposed to go. The little bung is right there. And now before we tighten it down on either side, I want to make sure that you blow it out. So that's why this side's still detached. So watch this, this is funny. All right, the hose is officially on. Got this one on, and then got this one on here. This one was a little fun to hook up, or to tighten up, because I had to get a wrench in like this from the back side, but it turned out pretty good. Got it all zip tied up and secured. Unfortunately, the placement of the actual check valve up there was right against where other metal was. All right, so now we're putting wire loom around it. So if it does hit metal, it won't be rattling. But we'll make sure it's secured well with some nicely placed zip ties. All right, put the wire loom on it, and now it is secured. So everything down here seems to be done. So we're gonna quickly check under here, see if there's anywhere where we can come through the firewall that's just kind of apparent and up underneath the car, because we do have to run the boost reference out here. All right, so it's been a little bit, we got a little distracted, but anyway, we were doing a couple things. This is our solution for finding the boost reference. We're gonna tie in here with the vacuum line that's coming off of the gauge, and then for the power cable and the vacuum line itself, we're actually gonna be coming through right, here, let me see that. Right there, that big black circle there. So it's a big grommet that you can see through here, which we actually had to take out the glove box. So it's right in there, right through that insulation. So we're going to be coming through here and then just kind of running wires over that way over to the driver's side, because that's where the gauge is. All right, so we actually poked through the grommet already. That's what that long, is that a screwdriver?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's what the long screwdriver's for. And then now we have a vacuum line, because the one that came with the gauge is not going to reach all the way around and out here. So we had to add this and then just a power cable. And while he's working on that, I have actually went ahead and put the gauge inside of the gauge pod. So it looks really, really good. It fit in there fairly nicely. Had to add a little bit of a black electrical tape around your gauge. That's how you can get these things to fit snugly inside of the gauge pod. Or if it was too tight, then you can actually sand this. So this looks really good. It'll be mounted right there. Went ahead and drilled a hole in there, and then basically drilled a hole inside of the pod itself. Well, I drilled a hole inside the pod itself and then drilled a hole in here where this hole come through, and then I went ahead and ran all these cables, and I'm about to hook this all the way up. So this will be done in just a sec. And here's how it's going to look from the driver's compartment. So really nice clean fit. Probably angled a little bit more down than what I would like, but it still looks really, really good. Good fitment. It's a factory piece that he just adds this to. Looks really, really good. All right, so after pulling the cable out, see the red and the white, those are the cables that we just pulled through. Well, the cable and the vacuum line. We got the same little glow stick or flexible, what was it, just a fiberglass tube thing? Mm-hmm. You buy these specifically for fishing wires. We were able to run that all the way through. It's coming through here and coming out right here. So whenever we get it through here, we'll just make sure, like, I don't go up and down on a steering column, but we'll just make sure that the wires are up out of the way and secured out of the way of any kind of movement. We also made sure that going in between here, it's not going to be rubbing on any metal, you know, the typical things when you're running cable. But we're going to be running it to right here and then attaching all of these different cables however we need to. And then after that, the last thing that we need to do is actually hide these cables inside of, probably inside of this sill all the way back, because that's what goes to the float and the pump. And then after that, we'll be done. All right, so we just figured out the colors for the cables because it's in the instructions. We just read it. The yellow is not going to be used because it is the second stage activation. And then the red is the 12-volt source, which is what we actually ran the cable for through the firewall, but we're not actually going to need that because there's a fuse panel right down there. So we'll find a 12-volt source in there with the key ignition on, and then that's what's going to power the actual gauge. So there's that, and then the green is the pump, the purple is for the float, black is a ground, and then we have the actual vacuum line. Alright, so if you've never used one of these before, basically tape up what you're trying to send to the other side, and as someone else pulls it, or you can also kind of do it yourself if you're brave enough, just make sure that the cables when you're pulling them don't get kinked and they get pulled all the way, and that's it.
Alright, we have the vacuum line all tucked in here, zip tied up, just kind of secured.
And plugged right there into this vacuum line, which is the vacuum feed. It's on a T, and it's all secured. Zip tied it up, make sure that it's not going to come out. And then, of course, the cover, engine cover, goes over this. So it's actually all done in here. I'm going to go put the engine cover on in a sec. Also, I got the lines from the back, ran all the way in this door sill, and they're currently coming out right there. So we have to just connect these two lines, and then this is the ground, and we can put that cover on. Dad's finishing up the wiring over there, and I think that he actually finished up the wiring back here. So the float is done. We actually added an inline fuse because we realized that the kit came with a fuse. So this way, if the actual pump, locks up, it won't take out the gauge. So that's really good. So this is the final fitment in the back. Looks really good. All right, the install is finished. Got that mounted, got all the wires and everything connected, all the panels back in, glove box is back in over there with the wires connected. So originally we thought that we were going to have to run a wire out to the engine bay for the 12-volt source, and then we found a fuse panel actually where the glove box was, or behind the glove box, but we realized that all of those are like control modules or something, so we had to rerun the cable back out here. The cable is coming out there, and Dad put it in some wire loom, ran it very nicely all the way up around the back here, and I believe it comes back behind here, and then it ties in inside of there, and it goes into a fuse inside of the fuse box. It was actually a fuse spot that wasn't used, and it was key source, so it had 12 volt only when the key was on, which works really, really well. I have the tank back there filled up with the boost juice already, and that's going to be it. So I'm going to turn it on here in just a second. We're going to check for leaks, and I'll show you how the gauge actually works. Alright, so we actually had to connect to a completely different vacuum source up there, because the vacuum source that we were connecting to was only vacuum. It wasn't even boost. So this actually showed a line straight across because it didn't read any boost, and now there's a little bit of boost. So this is the home screen here. You can click this right button. Injection start, you typically want to set this at about half of your maximum boost, which mine is 18.5, so really I could do about 9. Let's do 10, just for a starting reference. And then your full injection, if you want to spray 100% at your maximum boost, then you want to have it set, under your maximum boost or at your maximum boost. But I only probably want about, I'd say 50%, so I'm going to do 36 for now. So that means that once it reaches 18.5 psi, it'll be spraying about 15% of the capable meth injection. And then you can, this is for the dual series, so I don't need that. Text color, you can change all sorts of text colors. I'm going to go with red since my car's red. Graph color, you can't really tell on camera, but that is yellow, because why not? Injection on. So this right here, if you go to injection on, you can turn it off, like if you're not using it, which I'm probably going to have it off most of the time. So let's go on that, and then we're back at the home screen. This right here is purge, which I don't know if we're actually purged up yet. So you might be able to hear the pump running back there. But that's all that's involved in installing a Snow Performance methanol injection stage 2.5 kit. This is the second one we've done. It's been a lot of fun. It is currently 11:21. We kind of spent a really long time on this, just trying to get everything right, and we got distracted a couple times. But anyway, it's a good kit to install. Definitely worth the money if you have a turbo car or anything like that and want to get just a little bit of octane out of it, and even some lower IATs, stuff like that. So anyway, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed and you want to see more of this car, I'm actually going to be doing probably going to be taking this thing to the drag strip and just kind of seeing the difference it's going to make. On a stock 250 horsepower car, it's really not going to make all that much of a difference, I don't think. But who knows, we'll be surprised. If you want to see that, just hit the subscribe button, and I'll have a video coming out on that fairly soon. So thank you all for watching, and have a great day.